So I'm delighted this morning to be with John Raiye. John Raiye's background is quantity surveying, and I love your description of a quantity surveyor. John, you put it more eloquently than I can. How do you define a QS or quantity surveyor?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not a practicing quantity surveyor anymore, but I did train as one, and I did a few years in the industry. I guess those skills I've transferred into what I do now, which is run a property business, which has three facets. The main one I work in is property development. To describe a quantity surveyor really is probably, in a nutshell, almost like a solicitor and an accountant rolled into one on a construction project. So a QS creates and manages budgets like an accountant would, but also implements contracts like a solicitor would. Although, you're not a fully qualified solicitor, but you have some legal skills in construction procurement and construction contracts.
And how far does your experience in QSing go back, John? Well, when did you graduate from university?
Yeah, I graduated just before the turn of the century, 1999. Then I trained with a firm called AYH in the city of London, near Broadgate, as they were called then. It was about 3 years with them, so I trained and qualified while I was there as a PQS with a consultancy practice. And then I worked for a developer. Again, I'd probably say that was more grounding and more, because I was mid-20s then, so it was more training and more development really at that early stage of my career. I was surrounded by quite considerably older project managers than I was at the time, and most of them actually quite a few of them were quantity surveyors by training as well. So they went from quantity surveying to project management. And I did about 6 years, I guess, in total. And then I started sort of investing passively initially.
And you, in terms of your background in property, it's the Midlands in Birmingham area. Is that completely correct?
Well, I mean, I trained as a QS where I was working with a lot of developer clients in the city. So I was actually working on some quite big office developments. And then I did some residential stuff down in Richmond upon Thames. That's probably where I got my first insight into residential property development, working for that guy who was doing a resi development down in Richmond. I then went and moved up to Manchester, where I was working for a developer. So there, I mean, I gained quite a lot of experience working on business parks, sort of offices, city centre residential development. Yeah, so and then some mixed use stuff as well, ground floor commercial, upper floor resi. So I gained quite a bit of experience there as well. And then I moved back. As I said, I started to invest passively. And then I guess since I've been back in the Midlands now for 10 years, 11, 12 years actually, I've been investing in the West Midlands and the East Midlands as well. Parts of the East Midlands, but predominantly the West Midlands. Yes.
So, John, we've established your background in QS. Just to give a context of where you fit into the Property Summit, you're on the how to scale your development business. What do you think are the key facets about developing your business?
Yeah, I guess I am at a road now where I'm sort of going to try and scale the business further. What I've done initially is gone from the bedroom, where I started off just doing HMOs, residential flips, to then taking on staff and setting up a sort of a team to manage my portfolio. We then started doing management of property for other landlords, so we generated more income doing that, I guess turnover. And then I started doing slightly, stepped up my residential flips, started doing more of those as the recession came and funding for larger developments became very difficult here in the West Midlands. So I carried on doing those, and then sort of, I guess, built a bit of a sort of a construction team. And then I moved into larger developments with high net worth investors, which, the first which we finished last year and sold off. So I am now looking to work with more private investors who I'm now having meetings with and putting them into new projects. So I guess what I'd need to do next is, now that I've got a sort of a foundation of a team that do like property management and a bit of deal sourcing, I will now look to build a small team around the activity of property development.
John, there's a difference between being an average investor, an average developer, and being an extraordinary developer, an extraordinary investor. So how do you take the next level from being an average investor, average developer, apart from give you bundles of cash, look after you? How can someone get to the next level? And what do you define as the next level, being an extraordinary developer?
I would actually probably say I've been doing property investing for quite a long time, but I haven't scaled my business. I wouldn't probably, I mean, there are guys around who have scaled their business, who I probably am looking up to move up to that level.
Sure.
So I'm actually probably, at that road where I'm going to try and scale the business. I mean, the problem with a lot of guys in this game is they go bust.
I think four fifths go bust. I think that's
80%
sure.
of developers go bust, and there's a reason for that. One is timing and understanding how to work the property cycle, because property is, it's an industry where the property market, it doesn't just play flat; it goes through boom and bust. So, I guess to be able to ride those boom and busts, ultimately you're going to lose money when the market turns, no matter what your position. I mean, I saw it when the last recession came. For a 31-year-old, I lost a considerable amount of wealth because I saw all my properties crash in value. But I knew what I needed to do to weather the storm. Again, having said that, I haven't benefited from the market, say, in the southeast. If I'd have located myself in the southeast, I would have seen this boom that you guys have seen down there. So, I haven't benefited from a boom. We've only just now come back in the West Midlands to what we were pre-2007. And you guys down there have tripled in value. So I've only adopted to my market, really.
Sure.
So in terms of your question, I'd probably say, to be extra, you use that term, yeah. I mean, to be extraordinary, there's extraordinary guys in the industry that are very skilled, doing exceptional. What's your definition of extraordinary? I'd probably say extraordinary is like someone that is able to stay in the game. You can build your skills over a long term, can't you, really? Ultimately, what are you measuring extraordinary by? Are you saying number of units a year? Are you saying, the size or scale of the developments that you're doing? I guess most people look at that, and that ultimately is what you're going to be looked upon. So, I guess it's just been more important for me to ride my local market, keep developing. And I guess now I'm at a road where I'd want to try and scale the business.
So in terms, and I know you're time sensitive because, but in terms of just continuing that theme, so you looked at the property market, apart from coming to my events, apart from, being a regular at your own local area in terms of your networking meets, how do you stay on top of the property market? Let's just focus on that. Is it through looking at what's in Property Week, Estates Gazette? Is it partly your background as a QS which gives you a massive advantage?
I wouldn't say it gives you advantage at all, no, because there's people that come from outside of the sort of the industry where they don't have that sort of, knowledge, but then they go on to do sort of great things because they don't have all that knowledge holding them back sometimes to a point. Because I would say that actually. How do you stay on top of the property market? I do actually analyze my business very regularly. So I'm always analysing the cash flow, analysing what's coming in, what's going out, analysing the values, analysing areas where I can, improve it. I guess I do that a lot. I do read regularly. I do look at legislation. I do plan ahead. So I would say I do try to think what are the trends in property really going forward. And then I try and anticipate them, and then
So,
maneuver around them, really, or work. Maneuver around them is probably the wrong word to use, wrong terminology to use, but I try and work with trends.
so John, we're looking at trends, we're looking at metrics. We got a brief glimpse of reading. I know you read Property Week, Estates Gazette, and so forth. What else would you be reading? What legislation? Is it planning legislation, or is it more than just planning legislation?
Yeah, reading journals is one thing. It just keeps you ahead of like sort of current affairs, what's going on. I don't just read those journals. I mean, really, I do read a lot of the the residential, property investor news. I read that. So I read YPN as well. And in terms of, yeah, sort of staying, ahead of
Staying up
it.
to date. Well,
Yeah, staying
because you
up to date.
mentioned,
I mean, planning has not been my forte. I mean, I've learned a lot. I'm learning about it. I've learned, Paul Higgs. I've learned a fair bit off him and looking at
sure.
some of the stuff that he does. Planning is now something I'm moving a bit more into. I've got a couple of sort of schemes in planning actually. So, but I'd say, if you don't, bring in experts where you need them. Don't try and be excellent, good at everything. Know what you're good at, but bring in other people that are specialised where you need them.
So, John, you're involved in the one-day property summit. You're on the Scale panel, which is with Richard Bowser chairing it. Bill Patel's on the panel as well from I Occupy. Stefan Canavan, who's based, well, I say he's based in Stoke. He's based in London, as far as I know, but he's got developments in Stoke as well. That's why I see him next week. You've also got the likes of Tor Potes from Develop With Us, who will be at the one-day summit. Nicole Bremner, East 8. Is there any concluding remarks you want to give? What one thing is, if people can't make it on Saturday, June the 10th, how can they get in contact with you? Is one key question.
Yeah, I mean, you can contact me via my business, ICOS Investments. Just check out our website, and I can sort of perhaps give people a steer and give people advice where where they need it as best as I can. Yeah, I mean, people are good. Different people. There's different ways to skin a cat. Different people will try and scale their business in different ways. I guess I've got my plan, and that's what I'll be sticking to.
So just for the listeners, the Property Summit, the be underneath the video description of how to book, is on Saturday, June the 10th. It's co-hosted with Tony Egan. And Tony's with me this morning because we're going to do a Facebook Live in about, well, it depends when you're listening to the video, of course. But the video was taken on Thursday, the 25th at about 9 o'clock in the morning. So I've got a Facebook Live with Tony, Egan, and a number of others involved in the one-day event. Look, I could easily go on asking you questions, and particularly because you're the only one who is at the event with a QS background. And to be fair, I don't meet many QSs, quantity surveyors. So that's where, for me personally, your uniqueness comes into it. I know there's more angles you can offer and so forth. What would you say your niche is? Because I know you're stepping away from being a QS. So what would you say your niche is, or is it mostly commercial to resi that you're looking at, or more or less you're just looking at the geographical area?
Yeah, I suppose I am just keeping things local, really, due to my family being local here. So, I mean, we're looking at various things, really. We're looking at one, office to resi conversion.
Okay.
Apartments, West Bromwich. We're looking at that one, analysing that one with an investor. We're looking at another site in Digbeth, which has got 32 apartments. Again, that is an office to resi, actually. Yeah, it is. And then we're looking at a couple of new builds as well.
John, I'd love to go on and on. I'm just time sensitive as well. I just want to say huge thanks for yourself, huge thanks for your time, huge thanks to the listeners. Look, whether you can make it to June the 10th or not, just ask yourself, do you want to be an average developer, or do you want to be an extraordinary developer? And now, if you want to be an extraordinary developer, no, it's obvious to come along to the Property Summit. And you're a very humble guy, John. So I just want to say huge thanks. I know you're going to be enjoying the sun for a few days. Hopefully it'll be nice and sunny. It's
in
beautiful.
Spain.
Yeah, in Spain. Yeah, it's beautiful and sunny in London. Look, I'm going to shoot off for the moment, and huge thanks for joining myself, and huge thanks to the listeners.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you.